Hi parents, hi heroes. So today we're going to be talking about I wanted to come on and address a number of questions that we received, and we receive a lot of questions, every day through our inbox, on our website as well as on our Facebook page and emails and a lot of places. And also we have these different Facebook groups, private Facebook groups where there's a lot of discussions and things like that. So I wanted to come on and address at least a few. And feel free to post in the comment and let me know if you have more questions. But so we're going to talk about these four. One is that should I give up my time with my child if he or she doesn't want to be with me? Now, I hear a lot of parents that talk about, they may still have contact with the child. You may have some custody time with the child, but when the child come over, the child lock themselves in the room, doesn't want to do anything with you. Maybe the child doesn't talk to you. And when the child does, the child is, really rude and cold, defiant, don't want to behave properly. The child may be, secretly spying on you, and things like that. So sometimes parents feel like this is just not helping. Like, why should I even bother to have my child if he or she doesn't even want to be with me? So we're going to talk about that question. Well, and then another question is that there's some parents that said, I still have custody of my child, or maybe they fought through court and then finally got the children back. But then, I feel so resentful toward my child because my child, lied and participated in the false allegation campaign. And, the children should know better. Why did they lie and said that I abused them? Because I did not, right? So we're going to address that. And then there's a question where we see a lot of parents that seem to confuse or mix up between estrangement and alienation. So we're also going to address that. And then there's another question where people said that domestic violence by proxy should be just, sufficient as a term to replace parental alienation. So we're also going to be address that. Now, before we go into the actual discussion, I wanted to let you know that this is just simply a discussion. It's a personal opinion that I wanted to share. I do spend a lot of time doing in-depth study of many cases, over 1,000 cases now, of parents and children, as well as, I do a lot of research into academic research and all that. But still, what we are going to talking about today is not to be taken as professional advice. So please go and get professional advice. And also, your personal case the best. So you need to make your judgment on what is right for you. This is just a general idea, sharing some ideas so that you can take it as what suits for you. Okay, let's talk about the first question. Should I give up my time with my child if he or she doesn't want to be with me and really behave really badly when they are with me? Okay, so before we address this, we need to understand what's going on with your child. We need to understand the dynamic, the situation that the child is being put in through. So what is going on is that the child is being controlled and forced and brainwashed by the alienators the whole time. So while what is going on is the alienators is forcing the child to choose and to reject you, to choose them and reject you. Now, sometimes this could be very blatant by actually saying, hey, you have to choose, right? Or something equivalent to that. And if you don't, then I will X, Y, and Z, right? So sometimes it's blatant like that, but a lot of the time it may not be. Sometimes it may be very subtle by, just the way that they respond to the child, maybe by withholding the love to the child, things like that, right? So the child essentially know that the child is being caught in the middle and being controlled and being forced by the alienators. So now the child have a conflict, internal conflict, because the child still loves you. Really, they do. Your alienated children still love you and still want to be loved by you. But because there's this conflict from the internal love and the external force by the alienators. So the child is now conflicted. And what has happened is the child knows that you love them unconditionally. So it's safer for them because on one side, this parent or this alienator saying, I'm only going to love you under this condition, which is you rejecting the other parent. And on this side, you said, I'm going to love you no matter what. So then the child is trying to, essentially, this is a survival mechanism. So the child has to choose to reject you in order to survive. And so now they have this conflicting thing that going on. I love this parent, but I have to parrot this narrative that parent is bad and that parent is not safe. And at the same time, the child is questioning because still the alienator is also a parent that the child still wants to love, right? So when this alienator paint this picture that you are either not safe or you don't care or you don't love the child, the alienators are pretty resourceful and pretty creative. So they have created this false narrative using some figment of truth. And they twisted the truth in a way that is pretty convincing. So the child is either confused or conflicted. And so the whole time while the child is rejecting you, they need to justify because it's very difficult to live with that guilt of rejecting a parent that is good. So they have to try to justify this conflict. So everything that you do is going to be used to trying to resolve this conflict. The child is constantly trying to resolve this conflict. And the alienator as the whole time is bombarding the child with this campaign of false narrative that you are bad and you're dangerous, that you don't want the child. So you need to help the child. You need to be the safe harbor and you need to be protective for the child. So anything that you do, you need to keep in mind your role as the parent all time is to communicate these three things: that you are loving, that you are safe, and that you are available. Those are the key things when it comes to alienated parents. You need to communicate those. So if you still have contact and you still have the child, and yet you decided to give up that time and say, you go to the other parent, I'll just won't have you here. That actually enforces the false narrative. That actually is perfect for the alienated to say, see, that parent doesn't even want you. That a parent abandoned you, right? So you can't do anything. You should not be enforcing that false narrative because you essentially letting go of the child and you essentially say, I don't want you. That's what the child's going to see. So that really doesn't help. So I would say that if you are in that situation, it's not easy. Being an alienated parent is not easy. You have a tough job and things have not been working in your relationship with the child, but that's not the end of it. And any moment that you have with the child is your opportunity to fix it. Now, if things didn't work how it was, then you need to figure out different tools, different kind of training, different kind of education, different kind of methods to find a way to fix the problem. The more time you have, the more opportunity for you to fix it. If you give up that time, you will not have the opportunity to fix it. A lot of alienated parents have zero contact with the child. And if you have no contact with the child, you have no opportunity to influence that relationship between you and your child. A relationship is built on a lot of different things, but the more time together is a way for you to build a relationship. Less time doesn't help a relationship. Okay, there's another aspect of it is that because the child is in this loyalty conflict, when the child's coming over, I call this the freeze-thaw period of an alienated child, is that when the child first come over, the child is still under influence of the other parent. And then they now come into your environment, which is a safe environment. But from the psychological point of view, it's very difficult for you to detach, right? Let's say you just got into a car accident and you got out of it, somebody saved you and you stand aside and it's over, the accident's over. It doesn't mean that you feel safe straight away. That you need time to calm down, you need time to regroup, and it still takes you a long time. You may not want to get out on the road again for weeks or months, right? So you need the same thing with the child. The child was in this unsafe environment, and now they are going to you in a safe environment. Doesn't mean that internally the child is safe. So you need to be understanding and give the child that time and space. So it's natural that the child withdraw from you, that the child trying to stay away from you and being cold and being rude, because all of that is still the reaction based on that programming and controlling. So giving the child time and space and showing that you understand is really important. And so definitely the longer time you have with the child, the better, but also understanding that so that you can give the child the time and space, because a lot of the time parents will try to this is natural reaction, by the way, but it doesn't help, is that parents will go, I pick up the child and the child's so cold and rude, and they're not immediately loving to me, so they then trying to push on the child, why are you behaving this way, why aren't you giving me a hug, and why is this and that, right? Or sometimes you even parents can react in a way that even worse, raising your voice and screaming and things like that, right? And so that doesn't help. So if you understand that you have to give the child some transition time to calm down and recollect, and the whole time showing that you are safe, loving, and available, right? So we have discussion on, for example, we interview some therapists that have a lot of success with these cases, and she said maybe one thing is to, when the child lock themselves up in the room, is to knock on the door and go in and say, hey, bring them some food and say, here, here's some food. It's okay that you stay in here. I'm outside, let me know when you're ready to talk. I would love to talk to you about something, right? Or I would love to hang out with you. I would love to see this movie with you. I would love to go out to ice cream with you, or something like that, right? When you are ready, right? One way is to do that, to show that you are loving, you are available, and you're safe, and say, yeah, it's okay. Stay in here for a while. But why don't we make sure that we'll do something together in an hour or something like that, right? It definitely depends on the child's age. So definitely there's that. So and I do see question, George. I do see your question, and we'll address that in a bit. Let me just finish my train of thought. And then so there's another aspect is when you say, well, my child is difficult for me to deal with, so I'm just gonna give up my custody with the child and let the child go to the alienator, right? So let's just think about that a little bit. That's actually kind of problematic, because imagine if your child is sick, right? Like, let's say your child have cancer or some serious thing, right? It's very difficult, but you don't just go, well, this is difficult, I'm going to just give up on the child, I'm going to leave the child alone, right? You don't do that. So the same thing, what your child is going through is actually a sickness. Essentially, it's a condition that the child is a victim of. So just because it's difficult, as a parent, you don't just give up on the child. The other thing too is you don't just then go, well, it's difficult, I'm going to hand it off to the other parent. I'm going to hand it off, and worst of all, hand it off to an abusive parent, essentially a toxic and abusive parent. So what if that parent is not around? Like, what if that parent abandoned the child? What if that parent, what if that parent passed away? Right? You are doing something because you think that that's an option. What if you remove that option and say, I don't have the option, like there's nobody else to, I just have this difficult child. Would you give up? You don't, right? You don't just give up on the child. So why would you give up on the child in this situation when it's difficult? And I do know that it's difficult because, the child's still going to the alienators, and they're still brainwashing, and they're still attacked. So the child keeps still getting worse and worse. So yeah, it's not easy, but it doesn't mean that you give up, right? So that, and the damage can be a lot more if you just let go. So really, it's important to make sure that you hold on as tight as possible. Now I see a different comment question in the chat room. I say John said, stay strong for your children. Each situation and circumstances have its own difficulties. And there is no one right way to handle alienation. It is a learning process for both the alienated parent and the child. And I totally agree. Like I said, I'm sharing it on based on personal opinion and also sort of the general aspect of it, your situation can be completely different. So I'm not going to say that this applies for everybody. And also another thing that's very important is when you look at this whole thing, there's no parent that is perfect. So it's actually also really important for parents to take a hard look at yourself and try to look at things and figure out if I have ever done things wrong and how do I fix that? How do I, and then also in the way that you are working with your children, if your parenting skills is, and parenting skill in alienation situation is much, much harder than just the normal parenting. So if your skills are not up to the challenge, then it's about you really need to go and find your support somewhere else, find your education somewhere else, find the tools, find the resources that you need somewhere else to try to fix the problem. So the solution is not to give up the problem. The solution is to, okay, how do I pick up the skill that I need to handle this difficult child? Not, oh, because it's difficult, I'm going to just give up. This is so important right now because I know that summer is coming up. So, it's a time that a lot of parents are trying to figure out, how to handle your difficult child. So I thought I wanted to address that right now. Jennifer said, when your father was ripped from your life at 3, is parental alienation. Then years later, as an adult, that child become a parent, and though children were alienated and so from you, to this day is the same thing. Go back and read King Solomon Bride. Thank you, Jennifer. I think what she's addressing is the situation of how parental alienation is transgenerational. If a person have been subjected to parental alienation as a child, it's likely that when they grow up, they themselves will become either an alienator or an alienated parent. And that's very common. We do see that. And we see George said it's worse when you rebuild your life with someone else and a newborn child needs almost all of your effort. And I agree with that. Yes. So now you're trying to rebuild your life and you have a relationship with someone else and you have a new child with this somebody else, and then you have the alienated child with the last relationship, who now that become a very big problem. This child is now difficult and defiant and cold and rude, and sometimes even your new partner get dragged in as a victim of this whole thing, and it's definitely unfair to your new partner. And you wanted to focus on your new child because that child deserves your love and attention, and I get that for sure. I get that. But at the same time, your alienated child is still part of your family. They are still your child. So it's never easy to try to balance it. And we talk about this a lot in this at Victim to Hero, about how targeted parents, how step parents, how challenging it is, because they honestly, it's really unfair to them because they are walking into a relationship that they don't get a hold of you. They don't get to have a normal relationship. Not only they have to deal with the normal challenges of a relationship as it is, they have to now handle your alienators in the situation with your children. Life is not always easy, and unfortunately, yeah, that's definitely a problem. So as an alienated parent, it's very important to acknowledge and appreciate the support that you have from your new partner, from the step parent. It's also very important for you to get support and resources and education somewhere else from the people that truly understand you, the people that can relate to you, because step parents may not fully understand you. So make sure that you are complete and whole, because a lot of the time parents are so broken and they're not being able to handle what a lot of this really come from the place that you need to be strong first. And you cannot give to the world, you cannot give to your new child, to just your new partner and your alienated child if you are not strong and if you're not your best. So it definitely starts from you being as complete and as strong as you can. And how do you do that? Self-education, support, all of this you need to build on your own. And maybe the step parent can help you, but really you need to make sure that you don't put that burden on your new partner and not letting that affect your new child. But at the same time, it doesn't mean abandon your alienated child. But like I said, everyone is gonna make their own personal choice. You can make that decision on your own. Don't feel like this is, the right or the only solution. I'm trying to bring out what I understand and what I see in a lot of situations. Another aspect to note is that your decision today doesn't have to be permanent. It could be a temporary thing because your relationship with your child is for life. It doesn't have to be just, like let's say if you choose not to see your child for a while, it can impact things for the long term. But if that's what you have to do, then keep in mind and think about your plan for the long term. How are you going to fix this in the long term? Because things are not permanent. Things changes all the time. I don't know what I missed in the discussion here, but I see something about I don't need to share. Yeah, please don't feel like you have to share your personal information on this page or in any of our groups. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. We don't want you to feel like you're exposed, and we definitely don't want you to put your personal case in any kind of risk. So yeah, please only share what you're comfortable with and that you make judgment and know that you're safe. Okay, Jane said you're speaking so incisively about difficult things to explain. Once again, thank you, Petra, for your clarity. Thank you so much, Jane. So much harder to parent as an alienated mother, but I'm never gonna stop. And yeah, and that's so true. Yeah, it's so much harder for you, and I know what you're going through. I can relate to you. I understand what you're going through. It's very, very difficult. I'm not saying this from an intellectual concept. I get this in here. I do understand it. Jane said, my goal now that I know exactly what I'm dealing with is to end the cycle of abuse or die trying. And that's definitely really a good cause, good effort. And take good care of myself along the way, of course. Yeah, that's great. Chris said, the most serious parental alienation runs 100% on manipulative parent contact denial. There just seems to be no way to help even your own child crying out for your help in their captivity. Worst case, set up supervised visit unnecessarily and then play games of no child access with not so good supervisors. Yeah, so Chris said it's not 100%. So that's why we were talking about this first question, where parents that still have contact and yet alienation still happen. So the child is still allowed to go to you. And then some alienated parents actually consider giving up that little time that they have. And that's what we're trying to talk about, is that don't give up that time. It's difficult, but do you know how many parents fighting for that little time that they could have? Because any contact that you have is a hope that you have to fix that relationship. George said, thank you so much, Petra. And yes, Chris, you're right, is that a lot of the time alienation happen when parents actually blatantly block the contact, either illegally or legally, through false allegation and putting things into trying to get you to not be able to have access to your child. And in that case, it's a lot harder for you to try to reach your child. Okay, that's one question. The next question is, I still have access to my child, but I feel so resentful toward my child because he or she lied and participate in the false allegation and claims that I abused him or her. And, my child knew that I did not. Okay, so we already talked about the fact that your child is a victim. and the victim of psychological abuse. The child is being programmed, brainwashed, and controlled by the alienators. So if you can look at your child as a victim, you can have that compassionate lens toward your child. So the conflict that you are facing is that you feel like, oh, you have to love your child and you're not allowed to feel angry and resentful. The thing is, what happened to you when you're being falsely accused of abusing your child is really outrageous. It's shocking, it's horrible, it's really really bad. And how you're feeling angry and resentful, that's natural, and you should be able to feel that. The reason you have this conflict is that anger and that resentment is misdirected. That anger and resentment shouldn't be directed to your child because your child is a victim. That anger and resentment should be directed to the people that is blatantly doing this campaign, which is the alienators. So that anger and resentment is natural, and you should allow yourself feel that because that's normal. It's natural that you feel that way. But just know that anger and resentment should be directed to the alienators. And you need, towards your child, you need to put on a compassionate lens and recognize that your child is a victim. This is just a survival mechanism. The child have no choice. Imagine someone actually put a gun to your child's head and said, you have to say this, right? What do you expect your child to say? You want the child to say anything that person say because the gun is on your child's head. You want your child to survive, right? So what your child say is simply a survival mechanism, and you, with your unconditional love, you need to look at your child with that compassionate lens. The other thing is, the other way of looking at it is when you see your child so cold and defiant and rude, is to recognize that what it is your child actually screaming out for your love. But the child doesn't know how to ask for it the right way. Anger is actually a mask for loneliness, for desperation, for calling out for help. So if you can recognize this, and if you can look at it, it's about reframing and it's about perspective. So if you understand it and if you look at it this way, then you can change the way that you behave and handle your child. And then you can direct the resentment and anger somewhere else instead of putting it on your child. So I hope that helped. Let's see. I know there's more comment question in the chat. Twisted, it seems the more effort in resolution attempt, the more difficult it is made. So yeah, there's a lot of alienators that are extremely malicious, and they are relentless in their campaign. It's not going to be a simple thing to fight alienation, and I mean it's this whole big process of fighting it. There's many levels of fighting it, right? Fighting in court, but fighting outside of court and everything as well. I will just say a few little things. We have this whole strategy that we talk about with the 6 facets when dealing with parental alienation, but I will just touch a few little things. As in, when it comes to alienation, you are ultimately, regardless of anything that's going on in the middle, right? Whether there's court cases, whether how your child behave, or how your family and friends taking side and all that kind of things, right? Anything in the middle are actually just distraction and just fluff. But ultimately, it is about the alienator and you. Essentially, it is the psychological warfare between you and the alienator, and everything that's going on in the middle are just manifestation of what underlining between you and the alienator. So if you understand that, then you can go, and in order for you to win this war, you need to go and take an inventory, because luckily, out of anybody, you are likely who have the most understanding of the alienator. So if you go away and look at what you truly understand about the alienator and what you truly understand about yourself, and it takes a lot to have self-awareness. So if you can put a lot of effort in to self-awareness and the alienators, and look at that, you will see why the alienator are winning this war, because they understand you and they know which button to push and they know how the power imbalance work out, and that's how they are getting to you. So if you can just understand that the underlining is between you and the alienator, everything else in the middle, the court battle, the family and friends, the child behaviors, all that, it's just a fluff. So if you can figure out how you can handle the alienator, and you can, is if you can just step back and look at the big pictures, and then look at what you understand of the alienator, and flip the script, because the alienators know you. The alienator have a certain very deep understanding of you. So if you do things unexpectedly and flip the script and change the way you are, how you are, and learn, because you know about the alienator, you can also develop a new script that you can help you attack the alienators. Then that's the way that you can manage this. There's a lot to it. I won't be dealing with, I won't be going a lot more into it, but I hope that just sort of some highlight into the way that you look at this whole thing. Katie said, when children only contact me for money, how should we handle this? I'm assuming this is a more adult children. Now, when it comes to children that's still really little, anything that dealing with money or things like that, it should be through parents, right? Because you're not, this is a child, you don't handle the child like that. Any situation when it comes to co-parenting decision, that should be handled between you and the alienators. But when the children are adult, now you have a child that's still brainwashed, that's still programmed and still have a false impression of you. So now you have an adult child that you have to deal with. Now, I know the struggle that you face, because you feel like, oh, if I don't give money, then the child's gonna say, oh, you don't care and you don't love, and you're hungry for that tiny little bit of contact that you get, right? So when the child asks for money, you feel like you have to bend backward and you have to try to please this child and give the money, and then you don't get anything else, and then you end up being used, just being taken advantage of. So I would say there are a lot of useful tools out there or books out there. So for example, one of a very good book is called I think it's called Don't Walk on Eggshells or something like that. That's a very good book, because that when you're being used like this is an indication that the dynamic between you and the child has to be broken, and you have set yourself in a place where you're being seen as being easily manipulated and being easily used. So you need to break that dynamic and change that dynamic. And so the best tool for it, like I said, is to self-education and then learn how to break that dynamic. Okay. And Kim said, I completely agree. I step away to not put my children in the middle, but I didn't step away 100%. I still attend every event that they will be out. I still take my dog for a walk by where they live. I will be visible in this commitment to them, as I live 2 blocks from them, and they will always know they can come whenever they want. It must be so hard for them, honestly. Yeah, and I agree. Like I said, everyone need to make decision that is best for your personal case, because if you have fought for a long time and you really feel like there's no hope whatsoever and you try everything you could, then yeah, perhaps stepping away is a way to it. I do want to say though, is that for all the cases that we have helped where parents got their children back, is that it's sort of like this. You feel like, oh, it's horrible, it's worse, and I would never see the light at the end of the tunnel. But things can turn around like this very quickly and unexpectedly, and you would never see it coming. So I don't know, I think I see a meme somewhere that also applicable to it is, sometimes you see a meme out there where people show, a miner that would dig through a tunnel and looking for, let's say, gold or diamond, right? And then the diamond and gold are on this side, and they are like literally an inch away, and they decide to give up because all along they've been digging this tunnel for miles and miles and miles, and all they see is darkness and no diamond and gold to be found, right? And yet within an inch away they give up and they turn around and leave. Parental alienation is very much like that. A lot of the time, the way that it is, the dynamic of it is that you will see things like it's horrible, like there's no end to it, and that it's not possible to fix this, not possible to turn things around. But I do want to encourage parents that looking at all these different tools and different facets of this situation, and I'm not just talking about fighting in court. Sometimes you might give up in court and then fight outside of court, right? There's different angle, different tool, different aspect to deal with this. So if you do want to give up, that's entirely your personal decision. But just know that sometimes you are just an inch away from that diamond that you're looking for. So just keep that in mind. Okay, the next question I wanted to talk about is estrangement and alienation. I see parents that sometimes will mix these terms and say, oh, my child was estranged from me, and etc., right? Or my estranged child. The two terms are not the same. They're not the same at all. Estrangement is what happened when the relationship broke down due to a good reason. It's either because you abuse the child or you neglect the child. That's called estrangement. Because the child, or you abandon the child and you leave the child alone, and then now it results in estrangement. Alienation is different. Alienation is the breakdown of the relationship due to false narrative and manipulation and brainwashing of someone else, and usually it's the other parent or step parent or someone else. So the two are not the same. So I want to make sure that we don't have these two terms confused. Jane said, flipping the script can backfire too, but it's important to stay true. Katie said, really broken sound. Are we talking about the audio quality of this, or I'm not sure. I hope that you can hear me okay. John said, it must be your connection. Kim said, I hear the sound, excellent quality. Okay, thank you. Carrie said, I hope to make the most painful decision in my life in the best interest of my son, who is 13, and for my own self-preservation. He's so severely alienated that he has been taught to hate me and wants nothing to do with me or my family. And what you are going through, by the way, Carrie, is that's exactly what describes alienation. Alienation is when a child, that's exactly what happened. And what you're going through, you're not alone. You're not alone. And like I said, we've seen time and time again, and I personally have helped many parents got their children back. And you can see the situation turn around like this. So definitely make your decision the best. I hope you make the best informed decision that you can. There are tools out there. There are successful cases out there. So do what you can. And you don't have to make permanent decision, like I said. We even talk about, so for example, we have videos where we even talk about how to create your online footprint so that you can leave messages for your children, even if you don't have any contact with your children. So yeah, definitely make what decision is best for you. Jane said the minor analogy is pretty great. Thank you. Nihan said, all for not a good reason. Yeah, for not a good reason, you're talking about alienation. For a good reason, you're talking about estrangement. Those two are two different situations. Okay, so the next question that I want to address is domestic violence by proxy. There's people that said, oh, we should stop using the term parental alienation and we should use domestic violence by proxy. So let's talk about what domestic violence by proxy is. Domestic violence by proxy is essentially if one person is hurting the other person using someone else or something else, right? So I wanted to hurt you, and I know that this car is very precious to you, so I'm going to damage this car, right? I want to hurt you, and I know that your dog is special to you, so I'm going to harm the dog, right? So I want to hurt you, and I know you love the child, so I'm going to harm the child. I'm going to use the child to hurt you. right? So domestic violence by proxy does describe an angle of parental alienation in that way. What it doesn't address is the child, because parental alienation is not only you harm the parent, but you harm the child, and the child is being harmed directly. There's nothing by proxy about it. By proxy means that it's indirect harm. But this alienator is an abuser that is directly harming the child. So domestic violence by proxy protect or describe the alienated parents, the targeted parents, but it does not protect the child. So when you're talking about the law, about describe about using terms to try to protect the victims of parental alienation, domestic violence by proxy does not protect the children. And ultimately, the children are actually the first victim. They are the one that suffer the most. So that's why we do not encourage using the term domestic violence by proxy to describe this. Now, when it comes to court, we're going to leave it up to you, or anywhere else. We're going to leave it up to you, because every situation is different. And we do know there are situations where judges are completely against the term parental alienation and they will not acknowledge that term. So really, you have to make your personal judgment on where you use a term. But I wanted to clarify so that we all understand what the difference between domestic violence by proxy and parental alienation. As Carrie said, I'm not giving up, but rather letting go loosely in hopes that, yeah, and I understand. Yeah, you don't have to give up completely. And Kim said, same for me, hugs and strength to you. Chris said, for every parental alienation, would it be true fabrication of a child and parent mental health crisis escalating our nation's mental health crisis? I'm not sure if I understand this question. Let me just read that again. Chris says, for every parental alienation situation, I guess, would it be true fabrication of a child and parent mental health crisis escalating our nation's mental health crisis? Well, I hope I understand your question correctly. But yes, parental alienation is a public health crisis. We talk about this a lot, not just here, but in every meeting that we have with legislators, with judges, with commissioners, with every education program that we have done for judges, lawyers, therapists, mental health professionals, and anybody out there that we ever talk to. This has always been the thing that we talk about. Parental alienation is real. Parental alienation is damaging to children and parents, and parental alienation is prevalent. It's a widespread problem. So you will add something that is real, something that's severe, and something that is widespread, you're definitely looking at a public health crisis. This is a public health crisis, but yet it's completely ignored out there. So yeah, I hope that I understand your question correctly, but yeah, I would agree. It definitely is something that escalates nation mental health crisis, definitely. And by the way, May is the Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's definitely a time for us to recognize that parental alienation is a mental health problem. It causes mental health in the children, and it causes trauma and a complex PTSD in the targeted parents. So yeah, definitely, this is a time that we should recognize parental alienation. Kerry said, yeah, so I hope that his father will stop weaponizing me and give me my son some peace. My loved one believes he will come back to us in time once he realizes. Sometimes the alienators don't stop, even when you give up the contact with the child. So, for example, in my personal situation, my father had no contact and had no way of finding the contact with me. But the campaign of alienation never stopped. The campaign is ongoing every day throughout my childhood into my adulthood. That constant control and constant need to force me to choose and to parrot her false narrative about my father, and the cruelty of it never stops. So if you give up and say, oh, I hope it's going to be better for my child, unfortunately, you're talking about an abusive, manipulative parent. So giving up may not help. I'm not saying all the alienators are that way, not all the situations are that way. So definitely, for your situation, decide what is best. I do want to say though, is that the sooner you can get out of an adversarial, high conflict court battle, the sooner your children's released from that pressure, and the better it is for your children. So I do agree that there are situations where you may have to decide to give up in court, for example, or give up somewhere, but don't feel like you have to give up your child completely. Like figure out a different way, for sure. So Kim said judges know very well that when spouses are divorcing or have already gone through divorce, that they use their children against each other, hence brainwashing and parental alienation. Why do judges act like they don't understand that? I get it, they want to not be in the mess of adults not working with each other, but that's the job that they choose. Okay, so I totally agree with you, Kim. We have actually a systemic problem, because at the highest level, which is the system, the law level, the law doesn't recognize parental alienation properly. I'm saying not properly because there are places where it is recognized, but it's not properly. And then also there's a lack of public awareness to recognize how serious or how damaging parental alienation is. And then on top of that, we also have, the system incorrectly incentivize things that are really contrary to the child's best interest. So we have all of that mingled together. And so in some situations, judges are actually, their hands are actually tied. They're not, for example, if you look at Caden's law that just passed at the federal level, the law actually said that judges are not allowed to take the child away from an alienated parent. Now, they didn't use the term alienated parent, they use the term of a parent where the child is bonded to or attached to, right? So the law actually doesn't allow the judges to rule otherwise. So, sometimes the judges, their hands are tied. Now, sometimes the judges maybe don't have enough education to be able to recognize a problem. So they hear these two parents. One side claim that you are abusive, another time where you say that the child being psychological abuse. So they have to make a decision, and sometimes they make a wrong decision. So yeah, there's a lot of reason why things fail, and that's why we work really hard on all these different levels and trying to fix the problem as much as we can. But ultimately, in your case, you have to be in the driver's seat, and that's why we call this victim to hero, because you are the only one that can truly be the hero to save your children and to save your situation. So the more well-informed you are, the more educated you are, the better chance for you to fight this, the better chance for you. And the other aspect that we talk about a lot too is that in court, when you go to court, you are essentially going to a different country, because their language, their rule is completely different than how we normally talk. It's not about common sense. It's have all these different procedure and different language and how you present things. So if you wanted your judges, and one of the reasons why judges don't hear you is perhaps you are speaking a different language. You're speaking a foreign language instead of speaking the language that is in the court system. I'm not saying this to blame parents or blame the victims. I'm never into blaming victims. I'm just trying to say is that sometimes parents will lose their case because they don't know how to present their case properly. And in the meanwhile, alienators are manipulative and they find a way. And we also have lawyers that could be unethical that help in the alienation campaign. And that's why they win in court. And that's why you sometimes lose in court because of that. So definitely a big problem. So Chris said, do laws or presume 50-50 share custody help, such as Arkansas or Kentucky? Any traumatized children of divorce in the state as of recent? So 50-50 helps, but it doesn't stop alienation. We've seen many cases that have 50-50 custody and alienation still happen. It doesn't prevent alienation. It doesn't stop alienation. It doesn't rescue the child from alienation. But we, on the matter of principle, we support 50-50 because there's no reason why it should be fair, and both parents should have the rights, and both parents should have responsibility, and the child should have the rights and responsibility and have access to both parents equally. So we definitely support 50-50 share parenting, share custody. But we do want to point out that it doesn't stop, it doesn't prevent, it doesn't, it doesn't help. When you're talking about an abusive parent, alienation can happen even in the 50-50 situation. In terms of data, we believe, we had a discussion about this recently with someone, and we believe that it has helped, but it did not prevent in terms of the data, in terms of the number of cases when it comes to high conflict situation. Apparently, it has helped reduce. We are talking about looking into the data specifically. So when we find out more data, we're definitely going to share with you. Julie said, I'm so concerned regarding any educating of judges. My ex uses false allegation of me being an alienator despite evidence of actually him alienating me. Yeah, that's a problem with false allegation, right? Anybody can create false allegation. And judges' education is definitely a very big piece, and it's a very important piece. So for example, we had, so Claudia, which you heard a lot, that we do talk about her a fair bit. She's a very strong advocate for parents. And so Claudia and I had a meeting, for example, with the Children Commission, which is a federal agency at the state level that educates the judges and the magistrate on matters to do with child abuse. So they train the judges, right? So when we go to them and we talk to them about parental alienation, and we said, how are you dealing with this? And they said, oh, we don't deal with this because it's not child abuse. It's we only deal with custody issue. And we only deal with, sorry, let me correct that. They said, we don't deal with custody issue. We only deal with child abuse issue. And when then we explained and said, this is child abuse. This is child psychological abuse. And when we explain and we show their data and analysis, and they go, oh, wow, this is a paradigm shift for us. We never look at this as child abuse. We look at this as just a conflict between parents. Now, the next thing they said, and then we said, okay, well, then you should fix this. And they said, the next thing they said is that, okay, we went away and we talked to our legal team. And the problem is within the four corners of the law, it doesn't define this as child abuse. And if it's not within the four corners of the law, because we are a federal agency, we are not allowed to operate outside of our scope. And so that's a problem. So talking about educating judges, this is a federal agency funded by the federal government to train the state level judges on child abuse, and they themselves don't even recognize this as child abuse, and they themselves said this is out of their scope because it's not defined as child abuse. And as you can imagine how disturbing it is for us to hear this. And that's why we are pushing so hard on the legislation to try to find some way to put parental alienation in some way for it to be recognized as child abuse. And at the same time, we also push on the academic front to push publication to show that this is child abuse. And this is why. But at the same time, we're also trying to do training for judges and lawyers and things like that about this. Julie said judges cling to assumption, thinking that they are expert and they are totally missing what is really going on. Yeah, a lot of judges, some judges get this, some judges don't get this. We do have, for example, recently, and I hope you guys join us on Monday. We have attorney Brian Letmer, who is going to be sharing with us, some of the updates in situation in Canada. But there have been a lot of progress in a lot of places. And we have seen, for example, cases where judges award not just custody, but also damages for alienated parents, because they recognize alienation and they say this is not right and it has to stop. So it depends. There are situations where judges that don't get it, and a lot of those, but we also have a lot of judges that do get this. If you guys seen the book Parental Alienation, Science and Law, you will see 1,000 case law that discuss parental alienation. So it is it is not entirely that judges don't recognize this. It does get recognized, and a lot of families do get their children back because of that. So Kim said, how did those states mentioned above become 50-50 custody? Well, advocacy takes time. So, different advocate group brings this up to legislator. And this is not just to do with 50-50 custody law, it's to do with any law, is that you have constituents, an advocacy group that represent constituents and contacting legislator and bring up this issue, right? So you can either yourself contact the state legislators. Everybody have a representative. You have a state representative, and you have your senators. You have your assembly member that represent you. So you can contact them and bring up this issue. You can contact them and bring up this issue as your personal opinion, or the different advocacy group that also bring up this issue. So they bring up the issue as a matter of, an issue. And then if the legislator believe and take side, then they will take that issue and create law around it. And then in order to create bill around it, right? So bill is a proposal of a law. And then when this bill go through the legislative session of that state, if it passed, then it becomes a law. So that's how the 50-50 custody passed. So 50, for example, we interview Dr. Frobiscus, who did a lot of study on parent-child relationship, child emotional model and stability model, for example. You can, if you haven't seen it, look into our video. And so he actually spent 10 years to push the legislation in Arizona for 50-50, and eventually they actually got that passed, and it's a very successful campaign. So that's how that law became 50-50 in states like that. There's National Parents Organization. We also interview Dr. John Hubin, who is the chair of National Parents Organization, and their focus is definitely on 50-50 parenting. So they also have chapters in all the states, and yet their effort is all about pushing legislation for 50-50 custody. So that's how those states got that. Okay, Chris said, why is not DSM-5 volume 995.51 apply in clear cases by pediatric mental health care providers who have to see it? I don't know if I understand your question. Why is it not applied by the mental health professional? I have to assume that mental health professional do not understand the DSM or how to use it, I suppose. And by the way, for parents that are not familiar with how parental alienation is in the DSM, we do have an interview with Dr. Bill Burnett, and also we do have some poster that explaining which section in the DSM-5 that apply to parental alienation. If you guys need more information, we also have academic peer review papers that we can share with you guys. So, just contact us and we're happy to share with you how to apply this. So I hope that helped. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will see you guys again soon. And please join us, like I said, on Monday with Attorney Brian Ledmer to talk about the development of parental alienation from the social context, as well as in court and things like that, and intervention. So thank you so much. And feel free to post more questions. I'm going to come back and address more questions in the near future, because we do get a lot of questions, and sometimes we are not able to respond to people individually, but hopefully when we do event like this, we can share to more parents and hopefully address more questions like this. So thank you so much.